Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. I am so delighted to have my dear friend Shelly Wright back with us. We'll chat with her in just a moment, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Shelly Wright is a country music artist, author, and LGBTQ plus activist. Named Top New Female Vocalist by the Academy of Country Music, she rose to fame as a commercial country singer in the 90s and has since released 9 studio albums and charted more than 17 singles on the Billboard charts, including Shut Up and Drive, Single White Female, and the Bumper of My S.U.V. She made history by being the first country music star to publicly come out as gay, which she wrote about in her 2010 memoir, Like Me. The documentary film about her coming out process, Wish Me Away, was nominated for an Emmy Award. Subsequently, her life has changed to include advocacy and corporate engagement around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she's just been appointed head of corporate social responsibility at $10 billion global facilities management company, ISS. She is also vice chair of the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network Board of Directors, which is the leading national education organization focused on ensuring safe schools for all students. She was also recognized as a 2023 Crain's New York Business Notable LGBTQ Leader. Her latest book is 2022's My Moment, 106 Women on Fighting for Themselves. Shelly, welcome back into the back room.
Hey, Andy, it's great to be back with you. Am I now a veteran of this program?
You are. You are a vet.
Love it.
You've got 3 more to go before you get a bathrobe.
Yeah, I heard about the bathrobe. It's kind of like you're kind of famous for it in the way that Ellen gave away those really cute boxers with Ellen on the waistband, which were a prized possession. I have those, and now I need the Andy Ostroy backroom bathrobe.
I'm kind of like Oprah. I just give shit away.
You get a car. You get a car. You get a robe.
Somebody made a joke the other day about Trump and the Qatari plane. They said Trump is the opposite of Oprah. It's like, I get a gift.
Oh, my God, that's right. I'm assuming we're going to talk about that.
Sure.
The black hole of security risks that are included with his accepting a plane from Qatar is, I wish we were talking more about it. That seems not safe in 1,000 different ways.
It's not. It is not safe. It is not appropriate. It is not logical, rational. It's none of those things. It is the craziest thing. I know I keep saying that all the time about Trump. It's the craziest thing. But like every day he finds a new thing to top all the other crazy things that he's done.
It's desensitizing. And did you hear about the plane? He referenced the great golfer Sam Snead and then said something about, as Sam Snead always said in golf, when they give you a putt, you just take the putt. Sam Snead was notoriously opposed to that. Like, he made every shot. He was such a gentleman and such a pro. On the greens, he would never just take a putt and move to the next hole. It's so crazy how he just made up this quote, this ideology attached to Sam Snead.
Yeah, well, here's something I made up, which hopefully you'll appreciate as a #1 single songwriting guru. This was a little limerick I made up the other day. This is Trump. Oh, I love my new plane from Qatar. So silky and smooth like butter. Now it's giving folks pause, damn emoluments claws, but it still makes my heart go a-flutter. Thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget to tip your waitress.
Why are we not writing songs together, Andy? That's really good.
We should start writing Trump songs. I'm good with that. I don't know about anything else, but I could write some good Trump songs.
You're good with that, and you're a really great drummer, so finding a great drummer to play on the record is always half the battle. So
I'm in.
I think we've got a plan.
So this is a good segue. You've gone from C chord to C-suite. But before we get into this new role that you have at ISS, the company you're with, and the important work you're doing there, take us back a little bit and discuss how having been a country music star has helped prepare you and what the parallels are between your music career and your corporate one.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It's always great to get to kind of talk about, more than the headline, but, how we all get where we are. And that's one of the reasons I love your podcast and certainly love being a guest. I having been a music recording artist, singer, songwriter, touring musician since, I guess, 1993 is when my first record came out, for the past few decades. It would be cool to say that anyone who makes records can easily pivot into a corporate space, but I'm not convinced that's true. I have been able to for a number of reasons. The way that I always kind of looked at being the music business is that I really loved the business part as much as I loved the music. And I think that comes from just kind of how I grew up and where I grew up. And I think I'm kind of entrepreneurial at heart. I had a paper route in first grade. You and I've talked about all of these, our backgrounds and kind of how we came to be where we are. I really embraced the business piece of the music industry, the music business, and the marketing piece. And also, when I started having success in country music, which took me a while, I had, 6 failed singles and 2 failed albums before I had a hit record. Once I did find that success on radio and radio airplay and record sales, my inclinations were to parlay that power, that capital into nonprofit endeavors. So I founded my first nonprofit called Reading, Writing, and Rhythm in 1999. And that was as a response to what had happened at Columbine. That's a whole different conversation. But because I was doing really well at the time and wanted to use my power well, I was able to tap my friends on the shoulder who were also having hit records and, raised $1 million to put musical instruments into public schools. And then when I came out of the closet in 2010, I felt another kind of tailwind of influence and power and public capital. And I founded the Like Me organization, which, obviously for LGBTQ awareness, education, and our flagship project was the first LGBTQ center in Kansas City called the Like Me Lighthouse, which is now called the Kansas City Center for Inclusion. Anyway, all of that is to say that the business piece, managing a P&L, managing people, community impact work, and really kind of leveraging storytelling as an important part of business, all of that, pretty easy transferable skill set for me to move into corporate spaces.
And another thing that people may not know about you is that you are also a real estate investor / landlord.
Yeah, perhaps my favorite thing that I do is I'm a landlord, right? So I started buying rental properties in the late 90s in Nashville. And of course, Nashville has what an explosion of a city. And I began buying rental properties and managing them myself, doing handyman, handywoman work here and there. I can do simple drywall, simple plumbing, wouldn't touch electrical if you paid me to. I've been zapped a couple of times and I know better, but I've really enjoyed doing that, and I still have those properties. I have some in Kansas, and most of mine are in Tennessee, and I love it. And I love the engagement with people. I like, landlording and doing it well. Long term for 30 years requires discipline and rigor, and also having a great bench of subcontractors and vendors whom you can call on Christmas Day when a hot water heater blows up. To help you out, paying your bills on time, taking care of the needs of the property and the needs of the tenants. So I've done that. I still do it. Someone asked me recently, "Yeah, but who does that for you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, who does that for you?" They're like, "Well, who does the leases?" And I'm like, "Me." I love it. And I was thinking maybe last year I was kind of thinking, like, how many tenants have I had in all of my properties over all these years? Hundreds and hundreds of incredible tenants. I've only ended up in small claims court twice out of all of those years, and I won both of them. Thank you very much. And it's been a joy. And it's just a really cool. It satisfies me in a way that I need to be satisfied in terms of just like the doing. I like the doing because sometimes in the arts or in the corporate world, it's hard to just go out and move one pile of wood from point A to point B. And in landlording, I get that gratification.
Your career is really interesting to me because, we see a lot of artists, athletes, when their first career is over, they get into something else. But it does seem like you were put on this planet as an entrepreneur who fell into music. And that's how I see you. I see you as a very smart, entrepreneurial-minded person.
Thank you for saying that. And I feel like sometimes, when I'll be 55 this year, and I'm reflecting a lot about my life. My dad died a year ago, this time last year, and just really reflecting on who am I, what am I doing? And in some ways, I feel like my life as a musician, songwriter, I was supposed to take that path to get to here. So I don't see this role. And, when I came out of the closet, that's when in 2010, that's when I began doing corporate culture work, right? With higher ed, faith institutions, and global corporates. And I think that, I know this sounds crazy, and I don't want to diminish my music career because it was amazing and so spectacular to get to do it. But I don't see it as like what I'm doing now is just something that doesn't rival that work in enthusiasm and in gratification. I feel like I took the journey I took to get to this job right now. And we'll get into ISS and kind of what we do and how many people we impact and how many people around the globe work for ISS, because it's kind of fascinating. But I just see this as my kind of third life. My second life was when I came out and I was having that dual hat of musician and corporate kind of consultant. And now I've got the corporate hat on full time, and I know I couldn't do it the way I do it had I not been a touring musician who thought about songs and narrative and story and human connection. Because as you know, Andy, you've worked in corporates in your fascinating journey as well. You got to know how to talk to people, and more importantly, you got to know how to radically listen. And I don't think I would have developed this skill set were it not for going to Nashville and figuring out, everybody here is better than I am, or at least as good as I am at music. How do I differentiate myself, and how do I get myself on the Grand Ole Opry? How do I make a record, and how do I get on the radio and have hit records? I just feel like all of that was to get me here in this spot today.
Yeah. That whole expression, life is a journey, not a destination, right?
100%.
Everything that happened yesterday is partly why you are where you are today and where you be tomorrow. By the way, speaking of hit records, I have our first song. I got the idea for our first song.
What is it?
You ready?
I am so ready.
Lady Landlord. Hot water heater broken middle of the night. We'll work through the rest, but that's the launch point.
Lady Landlord. How about let's iterate. Let's co-write in real time on the back room.
This is like Paul and John during the Beatles documentary, where they're just literally working through the songs and the lyrics. It's fascinating. And
co-writing, by the way, is my favorite thing in the world. Lady Landlord. Let's iterate. Let's play. What do you think about Landlordess?
Landlord.
Lady Landlord might have a better rhyme opportunity. Landlord.
Lady Landlord just, it gets out quicker.
It does. And I can see it. Are we talking like 3/4 time? Is it a waltz?
I see it as like a bouncy country song.
Garth Brooks, Ain't Going Down Till the Sun Comes Up.
Kind of, with living in a man's world, men control whatever, but I own the property. It's about owning property, and the ultimate message is I'm the property. I own me. There you go. That's our.
I just got. I actually, literally, just got chills.
Wow.
You're a deep thinker.
It took me a hit. Number one. I'm listening. I'm listening to. I'm trying to tune out of politics, and
how's that going?
Clearly not well. I'm microdosing. I'm trying to microdose. So after the election, I was like, I'm done. I can't. This is not good for my health. I got to find other avenues or whatever and read books. But I realized I never read books because I'm a slow reader, and you have to have time to sit and read a book. I can't do it. And people were telling me about audiobooks. So I got into audiobooks. Now I'm blowing through like 2 books a week. And then nothing about politics. So the current book I'm reading is called John and Paul, A Love Story. It just came out. A love story in music. It's fascinating, and it takes you way back to when they were like children in Liverpool. But I'm at the point now where George Martin is kind of introduced into the picture, and he's just starting to work with them, and they get their first record contract to cut a single, Love Me Do, obviously. And they're in the studio, and this is the very beginning of their relationship. They don't really know each other very well. And George Martin says to them after they cut the track, "Congratulations, boys. You just put down your first #1 hit." Like, he knew it. You can hear, I mean, talk about goosebumps. And it's like, I think you can tell, right? You can tell when you have a real big hit. So I think our song is going to be a big hit.
I've got a good feeling about it. And you are so right about, you really can tell. And I don't know if I don't think we talked about it last time on your podcast, but I may have shared it with you at dinner or lunch. When we recorded my first #1 record, which was 26 years ago, which is crazy. It's called Single White Female. We had the same experience. We cut it off of Music Row at Masterphonics. And so after a session back in the day, you would just ask the engineer to run you a rough, right? Just print out what we did today so I can listen to it and kind of hear it. And the engineer printed out a CD. I left to go meet a couple of friends at Granite Falls, right there off of Music Row. And before we went into the restaurant, I parked my car way out in the parking lot, so it wasn't near where people were coming in and out, because I wanted them to listen. And as you're playing new music for, people for the first time, you want no distractions. So we did have cell phones back in the day, but they weren't kind of as ubiquitous as they are now. So people put their cell phones away. I cranked it up, and we're in the car, and they're listening and intently. And then I opened my eye. I had my eyes closed, and I opened my eye and looked out of the windshield. And the song Single White Female was written by Shay Smith and Carolyn Dawn Johnson, neither of whom I'd ever met, which was pretty unusual on Music Row. Usually you knew the writers. And so I opened my eyes, and about 30 yards away, I see a woman running toward my car and waving her arms. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, oh, this woman is going to, like, I didn't know if it was a fan. I didn't know what was going on. She's running toward the car. I'm like, dang it, she's going to interrupt the moment. And I kind of close my eyes, hoping she'll go away. She gets closer to the car, and she's screaming something at me. And she comes to my window, and she points to me, and she said, "That's my song. That's my song." And I'm like, I hit pause. I roll down the window. She said, "I'm Carolyn Dawn Johnson.
Oh.
That's my song." And I said, "Get in the car." I rewound it, played it for her, and it was a love fest. We went inside. My producer, Tony Brown, was in there, and he said, "Shelley, we just cut your first #1 record."
Wow, that's a crazy story.
It was so crazy. It was so crazy.
But
she thought I was,
right?
Yeah. I just knew, and we didn't even that vocal that we tracked on the rough pass that night. I tried to beat that. I went into the studio with Buddy Cannon like the next week for 3 days to try to beat it, and he told me on that Monday morning, he said, "You're not going to beat the vocal that's on there." And I said, "I give me a shot," because you never, like, seldom do you get it with the first pass. We never beat it. That is the vocal. That's the rough vocal that went down to the record.
It really makes you wonder. I've always wondered, like Led Zeppelin, when they were in the studio recording Stairway to Heaven, when they were done, were they like, "Oh my God, we just created something that people are going to be listening to 100 years from now"? Or were they just so wasted they had no idea? Like young guys.
Probably a little of both. Having friendships with people in music for the past 30 years, I can't tell you how many times my friends have said, "We knew it when it went to tape. We just knew it."
Well, the only personal experience I have that I can ever refer to is with my late wife, Adrienne Shelley. When she first handed me the script, when she first finally let me read Waitress, I I got to like 6 pages in, and I stopped and I said to her, "Do you know what you have here?" And she kind of smiled, and she was like, "Yeah, I do." She goes, "But it's got to get into Sundance. If it gets into Sundance and people see it, it's going to be a big hit." And she knew, but she was still just a small independent filmmaker. And back in those days, everything depended on Sundance. And that's the tragic nature of her death on some artistic level, is that she never even got to see it get into Sundance. I guess people do know. Maybe they don't want to think about it or jinx it, but like you got to know when you create something that is going to just take off. You know?
I think so. And you know, there are many things in the world that really make me sad. And one of the things that makes me sad is I didn't get to know your wife. And we've talked about this a lot personally. Not just because, you know, she deserved to be here. But I'm sad that the world doesn't get the stories that she had yet to write. And, you know, when you've told me before that she knew it in her gut, and you've shared with me today that she knew if the world could see Waitress, it would be huge. It's such, her saying that is such, she wasn't that kind of she was a kind of niche, independent, as you said, kind of creator. The weight of hers actually saying that is so powerful, because this kind of arts world and music and entertainment world really humbles a person. I almost said humiliates a person. I meant
it
humbles,
does that too. Sure.
It levels you in a way that she knew how big it was to say, if the world can see this, it's going to be huge. She didn't say that flippantly without the right kind of context.
No, and she had been banged up and bounced around for years. So it was in the context of that she arrived at that place with that.
It was huge that she knew that. Yeah. And she was right. Yeah.
So tell me about ISS, and then I have some questions specifically about the work you're doing at the company.
Yeah. ISS, and I went back and asked legal, I said, hey, what does ISS actually stand for? Because, you know, as I'm, you know, new in the company, what if someone asked me what it stands for? And it used to stand for International Service Systems, and then it changed to something else. But technically, it stands for nothing now except for ISS. And Richard Marks, our mutual friend, said, you work for ISIS? And I'm like, no, it's not ISIS, it's ISS.
You got to ask.
It is.
These days, you got to ask.
Of course, and he would. So ISS is a global hospitality facilities management company. So whatever building you might go into around the globe, we are the company that brings that to life, i.e., corporate dining, janitorial, vertical transportation, escalators, elevators, people movers, all of that. We do it, and it's a 125-year-old company, headquartered in Copenhagen, Denmark, built on just incredible values and corporate social responsibility as part of its DNA. So I am delighted and truly honored, Andy, to be part of this team and to help us, drive community impact, do the right things in the world, and use our tremendous impact, resources, power, position, influence to do great things.
So what is corporate social responsibility, and how does it impact the everyday lives of Americans?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it might feel ambiguous, right? And I guess in some ways it could be. It's specific to the business, specific to the sector, and specific to the stakeholders and the leadership. At ISS, corporate social responsibility is very clearly articulated, that we do right by our people, which we call placemakers, our people who go to work every day and clean and cook and make sure that the elevators are running on time. Doing right by them, doing right by our clients, and being essentially good corporate global citizens. And it can look like a number of different things, right? It can look like, and it should roll up into the values of the group, corporate, big umbrella business. But when it's done well, it thinks global and acts local. And what does that really look like? For instance, we had an event that we were planning a partnership with Chef Amanda Freitag, the incredible chef you might know from Chopped or the Food Network or any great restaurants that she's been in. We'd planned an event with her. In Q, I guess we decided to do something together in December of last year, and then the fires hit in California in January. So we pulled ourselves together and said, hey, what can we do? How do we use this? How do we take this great Amanda Freitag event and make it, kind of support those who have been impacted by the fires in Pasadena and Altadena? And so we did that, and we raised, a good amount of money, and as importantly, pulled the community together and built community, and rolled up our sleeves and walked toward a problem to help solve it. So it can and should look like that. We should be responsive to systemic, issues that need to be addressed, whether it be housing insecurity, food insecurity, education, access to education and opportunity. But then the world has no shortage of emerging, crisis situations. So corporate social responsibility should be pliable and nimble. And that's why I love to lead it. It in many ways kind of mirrors my old life of touring, and you never have the same day twice. You get to respond to a crowd in real time. Okay, they're not feeling this set. Let's call an audible. Let's change the song list. It can be and should be as nimble and as pliable as that.
So let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI, which makes some people nuts. And it's also something that's been under merciless attack by Donald Trump and the administration. What is DEI, and why is it so important to actually say diversity, equity, and inclusion versus just saying DEI?
Yeah, there's a great thought leader and practitioner of DEI. Her name is Brene Myers. She used to be, I think, head of chief diversity officer at Netflix. I think she consults now, but I've been following her for a long time and admire her work. And she posted something many months ago about insisting that people say diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because the shorthand of DEI, it's really easy to malign something you really don't understand. And DEI, it's what a clever, the administration and, those who are opposed to DEI and being woke, what a softball that was for them to be able to grab diversity, equity, and inclusion and kind of package it up into these three scary letters, right? Much like LGBTQIA has been easily maligned as just these, one-dimensional, letters that people can just be opposed to, can take a counterpoint to the letters. But for instance, when I came out, as a queer person in 2010, I gave kind of some depth, with the people that I knew, whether it be my fans, my friends, people in the world. I gave some depth to the letters LGBTQ. It was no longer the letters, it was me. And there's a power in that. And so similarly, DEI, what a great marketing campaign to just get people to be against DEI. And so Brene Myers' guidance that we get people to say diversity, equity, and inclusion, and why that's important. And Pete Buttigieg, I was talking about, he said the opposite of diversity, equity, and inclusion are uniformity, inequity, and exclusion. And he said, try to get people to say they're for that. And this is why he's a genius. This is why I hope he'll be our next president. But again, that's a different conversation. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has been so easily packaged and maligned as DEI and as something that takes something away from, whether it be straight white guys, for instance. And that's not at all what it is. It's about creating opportunity and awareness. I'm in my last role, I was the chief diversity officer of a global design build firm. And I had a lot of these conversations with people on my team. And most of them were straight white guys that said, I'm scared by and this was in 2020. I'm scared by the notions of DEI. I feel like I'm being left behind. I feel like I'm being left out. I feel like I'm being told that I'm bad. And when you can have thoughtful conversation, and that was the starting point of a conversation, and I really appreciated the opportunity to talk to them about what DEI is and what it isn't. And I can tell you, Andy, through the course of 4 years in that firm, those guys that I had those initial conversations with, when they understood what DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is and isn't, all of them, 100% of those guys I had those conversations with, ended up being great advocates for Black and brown people, women, queer people, and all. Inclusion really is for all. It doesn't leave anyone out. It includes, including but not limited to veterans, including but not limited to kids like us, Andy, who grew up poor and didn't have access and resources. So, DEI, this is going away. DEI is not going away, but this maligning and targeting DEI is going to go away. And I'll tell you why. Because it's so flashy at the top end of the iceberg, so easy to say, we're against DEI, but at the bottom of the iceberg, there's all of this kind of practice and practicing that has been happening. For instance, at ISS, we've been doing DEI work, belonging and inclusion work for 125 years. We can call it DEI, we can call it XYZ, we can call it anything, but at the end of the day, organizations who focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, social impact, belonging, they're more profitable. They make more money. Their teams stay with the organization longer. And all of that translates to more money, more profitability, more economic security for our placemakers, people who go to work every day. So all of this I don't want to diminish it and say it's not a real and scary time for a lot of people, but there's kind of some pearl clutching and front of house stuff that's going on to make sure the administration isn't mad at them. But the back of house, everybody's doing the same thing they've always been doing.
Yeah. The thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion for me and the rallying cry that it's created among conservatives, I hear what you're saying and I agree with it all, but I have to drill down in my head even further than that, because we have to really understand, or question at least, what is ultimately at the root of it, the opposition to it. I don't think anyone could really say like, the white guy, the straight white male is really worried about other white people. It's like at the root of it, it's just like DEI, Black and brown. That is it. It's just like giving Black and brown people shit they don't deserve. And to your point, taking it away from me.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think you're spot on. One of my mentors, Dr. Eliza Bayard, once said to me that when you're used to having more than you deserve, equality and equity feel like oppression.
Right.
And we know that not every straight white guy is built the same. Also, I'm a gay white woman who grew up poor, but I have tremendous privilege in my whiteness. I have tremendous privilege in 1,000 different ways. And I think your point about what is DEI, really at the heart of it, it's how do we, it has been successful in otherizing. It really does feel binary. It's feels white versus Black, right? And we started to hear these conversations and see kind of this tailwind, this inertia around, Black Lives Matter, when George Floyd was murdered, when Breonna Taylor was murdered, and you could begin to feel the panic. I could amongst the kind of fringe right, but then the fringe kind of crept. There was a little mission creep. The fringe was less about the fringe right, and now the fringe is feels like center right, if anything. I think 2 years ago, I would have said it was about otherizing Black people. And I think in the past 18 months to a year, it also has been successful in otherizing women, and I say this because of the kind of the manosphere and the kind of I don't want to say overcorrection, but that pendulum of we're men and we're going to grow beards and we're going to, like, I don't know about you, and I know you have a beard sometimes, Andy. But now, and I've been talking to my friends about this, now when I see a man with a beard, I have a Pavlovian response that I wonder, is he MAGA? I really do.
Hold on, I'm just writing down. Make sure to shave next time we see Shelley. Okay, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I will add that there are people who are part of the MAGA community that I love, right? There are people in my family that are, part of that MAGA. But I think the bro kind of culture and the, hey, we're getting left out, we're getting left behind, people who aren't qualified to have our jobs, the Black people, the queer people, the women, mostly the Black people, the women. I feel like there's a great kind of, I guess, gang mentality in the bro culture, and maybe we have it, on our side of the aisle as well. But I think you're right. I think it's been a kind of DEI has been code,
right? And
an easy way, and it's so crazy because we gave them the language. Like, what would they have said had we not, had diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at the fore, at the $1 billion roundtable with JP Morgan Chase, with the, the big corporates of the world? What if we hadn't organized around those principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion? What would they have used? What would their language have been? What do you think it would have been?
It's a really great point. Branding is everything. I mean, it's just, it harkens back to the defund the police movement, which similar thing to me. We gave them that opening.
Yeah. And because, the administration and Donald Trump is really good at TV, and he's really good at branding and marketing. And, I think I probably underestimated his, I don't want to say intelligence, but and as I said it to you at lunch, he's almost feral in the ways that his instincts, we gave them the language, they took it, and it's like we're told as kids, young people my whole life I was like, be careful if you have a gun, because the bad guy will take it from you and use it against you.
Right.
This is exactly, we have to stop giving them the language. And by the way, I truly have never been a registered Democrat or Republican. I'm an independent. So when I say we, obviously I fall on the left side of the aisle right now and have, pretty hard for a long time. But we have got to stop giving them these softballs and this language that they're using the weapon on us. Well, they're using our things on us.
That's a really great point, because I think they spend a lot of time and effort and perhaps money coming up with their brands because they know the effectiveness of it. And I think we spend no time thinking about the repercussions of the things we say, because so many Democrats are just, they're operating in a world of purity tests. This is what matters to me. This is what gets me excited. And this is what I'm going to put out in the world and say it. And there's no strategic thinking, because it's just like, it makes us feel, and I say us, even though it's not me.
Yeah.
It makes certain people feel good to take certain positions and call things certain things, without thinking of the branding and the marketing and the ultimate consequence of those things. Trump does that really well. Russia, Russia, Russia. Big, beautiful bill. We see it with everything. He puts a name, a label on everything.
Yeah.
And he knows what that means. And then they use it over and over again, repeat it over and over again. And it becomes part of the lexicon. Democrats just spew out their own ideals and values and hope it catches fire in the world, and often it doesn't, and it just undermines everything they're trying to do.
You're so right, and the purity test, that really resonates. And I want to say something about when I came out in 2010. I got a lot of flack and blowback from a lot of corners of chatter, that the way I came out was too orchestrated. It was just too orchestrated is what the criticism was, because my book dropped on that same day. I went on the Today Show. I came out. I also had a record that came out that day, which, by the way, couldn't come out before I came out because there was a song on it that revealed that, and it was a record I'd written during my breakdown, which I call now effectively with Affinity, my breakthrough. But when I was asked, well, why did you do it like that? Why did you have to make it such a media blitz? And my response then and now is the same. And it really aligns with what you're talking about, that purity. And like in a perfect world, I could have just gone to MySpace and said, hey, you guys, I'm gay. But my response then and now to why I came out with such organized kind of strategy is that people who tell stories about people like me, Focus on the Family, any number of, organizations who are anti-me, they use a tremendous amount of brand and strategy and mapping to tell stories about me, to malign me. And my point to the world then and now is I knew I needed to meet the moment with the same kind of commitment, focus, marketing, branding, strategy, timeline that they did when they told untrue stories or maligned me. And so as I look back now, 15 years ago, I'm really, number one, proud of the way I did it and wish that the Democrats would take a page out of that kind of strategy, mapping, marketing that the Trump administration and their organization does, because they're very good at it. They put more thought into it. And it's like we're playing the old sport of basketball and our competitor is playing what I call shitball. We have to play shitball. We can no longer play basketball when someone else is on a different field with a different ball, with a different set of rules. It's time to play shitball.
I think we're hitting on something here which is so important. And I never thought of it this way, but Donald Trump and Republicans, everything they do, everything they say, and everything they put out is with the thinking that Americans are dumb and they'll believe it. Democrats take the opposite approach.
We can get nuanced. We can get complicated because people are smart.
They'll get it. I think that's it right
and
there.
And people have time to get it.
Yeah.
And people have time to get it. They do not have time to get it.
And that's the mistake, is that they just operate with these assumptions about the electorate when we've learned that the electorate just wants, what are you going to do for me? Okay? My kitchen, my life, my kids, what are you going to do for me? And we got to get back there, because if we don't get there, we're going to keep losing elections. What is belonging, and how does it positively impact businesses?
That's a big word, belonging, and it's an important one. And I will go back to kind of that animal, the wild kind of parallels that I'm drawing with humans and the wild. I read once about a case study of a company injecting rats with a toxin. And they had like a dozen rats. They injected several of the rats or all of the rat. I forgot exactly. I should probably know this. But anyway, they injected rats with the toxin. And then the rats stayed together, but one who hadn't been injected with the toxin was separated with a wall.
Wait, is this where they turn rats into trans that Donald Trump was talking about?
This is exactly it.
I knew there was something
that's
there.
Right. It always comes back to trans and bathrooms. They separated the rat that hadn't been injected with the toxin and the rats who had been outlived the rat that had been separated, the rat without a toxin, which underscore, and this study was done multiple times in my understanding, it underscores the value of togetherness and feeling like you're part of something. And I will also say in mass incarceration, right, in the prison system, what is the worst punishment you can give to someone, Andy? What is the worst thing you do to the worst person in the prison? You put them in solitary confinement. Because we know as humans that is the worst thing you can do. Now, I understand different person. I like to be alone sometimes, but by and large, separating a living being from others is damaging. It shortens the lifespan. It diminishes joy, purpose, value, all of that. There's no context. You die sooner. And so belonging, as it pertains to the workspace, not only is it better for your employees, but it also enables conversations, problem solving, collaboration, innovation, when everyone feels that they are safe to be who they are and to contribute and to speak up and share. And of course, there is no organization on the planet that has nailed it completely, right? There are always, you can have global policies, local policies, the right leaders in place, and still struggle to find that belonging. But when you do, when you find the belonging more than you don't find the belonging, you see, again, more profitability, lower attrition rates. People want to come work for that company because maybe they've got friends that say, I feel like I fit in there. I'm not like everybody here, but they're not like me either, and I'm not like them. And so belonging is a really important fundamental of a living being. And that is my TED Talk. Thank you for coming.
My last question is with regard to something you alluded to earlier, and that is how you and others can transition from one professional life to another, and not just do it once, but multiple times. How and why is that important for people to be able to truly grasp that they're not locked into one thing while they're on this planet?
For me, I'm a curious person. I'm one of those lesbians with the can-do attitude.
Whoa. Hold on. You're just, the straight man in me is like, whoa, what is that about? Is that a thing with lesbians?
Oh, yeah. And there was a Saturday Night Live sketch, and I want to say that it was it Will Ferrell? Anyway, he said, remember when it's like his mom was, forgotten the name of the character, but she said, what is it about lesbians? He said, they have a can-do attitude. I've forgotten what the sketch is. We can Google it later. But I have always had a can-do attitude, and I think it comes from my folks, and they raised us to, plan your work and work your plan. And that applies to whether you've got a paper route in first grade or you want to go to Nashville and try to figure out how to do it. So again, I don't want to make a grand sweeping statement that everyone can pivot from X to Z. But for me, I think because I grew up I was a queer country artist that knew the minute I got outed, my career would be over. So it caused me to think about, like, what are the other things that I can do and enjoy doing, which is probably why I got into real estate. Because in the back of my mind, I always knew my career was so fragile. And when you never feel completely safe in anything, you tend to think of a plan B, a plan C, or other ways to survive. And that didn't scare me. At first it scared me, but then I was like, well, life is life. I'm probably going to have to figure something out because I'll probably get outed at some point. And I think all of that caused me to be really nimble and curious. And my personality type, I'm wired to say, hey, what's next? And Andy, I've got like 10,000 sunrises left. Like, I'm 55 this year. If I'm lucky, I've got 10,000 sunrises left. And I just see it as not what can I do? It's what do I get to do? And at the end of the day, for me, I know at the end of my life, I'm a person of faith. So it would be God asking me one question when I die, one single question. What did you do? What did you get done? And I'm on my third life. I'll probably have a fourth and a fifth. I hope I do.
You're going to, and it's going to be with me when we write Lady Landlord. And we have to somehow get the can-do lesbian thing in the song. I have to spend some time thinking about it, but that's an important element, the can-do.
Can-do lesbian.
Like a can.
Can-do.
Nobody owns me. I own.
Syncopate it.
Yeah, we'll work it out.
Also, lesbian kind of can be a soft rhyme with thespian. I'm just saying we're going to, my friend Rodney Crowell, whom I'm sure you know, Grammy Award winning singer, songwriter, producer, and he produced my record that came out in 2010. He is a stickler for hard rhymes. So we're going to want to let's begin our rhyme list. Let's get our words together. but we're going to need a hard rhyme with can do lesbian. So if any of your listeners have any ideas or input,
all right, backroomers, get going, get started.
Oh, I know they've got it in them. I know they do.
We have to write this song. It's going to be a big hit. Big hit.
Lady Landlord.
Shelley, always a pleasure and fun to talk. Let's do it again soon. And
Thank you, Andy.
soon.
I love the back room. It's great to be on with you again. And the David Hogg interview that dropped, episode that dropped the other day was really, really very good.
Yeah,
You're
I love that
so
kid. I
good
think he's getting a bum rap. I think that we need 100,000 more David Hoggs on this planet.
We do. And as I was walking home and listening to that episode, it occurred to me the young man survived a mass shooting in his school. And we have the nerve as a society to try to deplatform him, delegitimize him. Shame on us, all of us. Mm-hmm. Shame on anyone. Shame on a society who doesn't lift him up and hear him. And I think he's getting a bum rap too, but I actually think he's going to be a senator within 5 years.
The first time I talked to him, I told him that. But here's the thing: I've spent a lot of time in the last week or so listening to him being interviewed in all kinds of places, including MSNBC and all the friendly places.
Yeah.
The only thing that ever comes back at him is you're just trying to shake shit up. The establishment is wondering why you're doing what you're doing. That's his whole point. That is his whole point. And we should engage other young people like him to come in and shake shit up, because guess what? It hasn't gone very well for Democrats.
Right.
In case you haven't noticed.
And I love that he's figured out his messaging, not figured it out, but he's very clearly saying if what we were doing was working, I wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
And it's so effective. And to our point of like the marketing piece of what the Democrats need is we got to stop having 50, 60-year-olds figure out how to market, because they're marketing to people with long attention spans. David Hogg knows there are no long attention spans because of this. And we have to have a new plan. And I think he's part of the new plan. Does he have a lot to learn? He says, look, I'm genuine. I have a lot to learn.
He's
but
25
he's a great,
and he's vice chair of the DNC. I mean, we should applaud him. Applaud him and for what he's trying to do to change the world.
I think he's amazing, and I love him, and I'll support him in any way possible. Anyway, Andy, I love you. I love the back room. Tell your cohorts on the back room I said hi, and I'll see you soon.
They're waving. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.